Today, I want to give my initial impression of South Korea. Now that I've lived here for 4 months, I feel I have the basic gist of how life works here. Well, my impression is just as follows. It is a little of a mix between Japan and China. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to visit the country prior to the coronavirus. Indeed, people here are very self absorbed, constantly checking their phones. I haven't connected with any Koreans here, and I have a few relationships with a scant number of foreigners. Indeed, I have barely done anything outside my home. In terms of work, my experience here is very similar to my experience in China. Indeed, I have a very similar experience the time I was living in Jinan in China. Kimchan is a city surrounded by mountains, and where I live feels very cut off from the rest of the country. There just isn't a whole lot to see or do here. There is a fairly large park and a rather unimpressive science museum, but no real nightlife to speak of, so I spend most of my time at home. Meetups are infrequent and usually revolve around food, though I did go bowling and sang karaoke. Like China, I just don't feel a sense of culture here. But maybe for me, it's still too early to tell. And like my experience in Japan, people here generally want nothing to do with me. Despite my friendliness, people tend to shy away from me. Well, it doesn't help that COVID is still on the rise here, and everyone is wearing face masks. I suppose my experience would be better if that were not the case. I can't really say anything about the transportation system here because I haven't used it yet. But one thing that is very similar to Japan is just how quiet it is here. Indeed, noise here seems to be at an absolute minimum, especially with the aforementioned lack of nightlife. The country is also highly respectful. Everyone seems to greet and bow to each other, just like in Japan. But I think that might be the only similarity. Indeed, though I am greeted respectfully, I don't feel that people truly respect me as such, and it is just part of the motions that goes with living in the country. It is difficult to get used to, and certainly different than in China. The work ethic is also very similar to Japan rather than China, though by no means to the same extreme. The language barrier is certainly a problem here, just as it was in China and Japan, and maybe even a little more so, as fewer people here seem to understand English. But there are some, and it gives me more opportunity to practice the language. And even though I've been studying Korean pretty closely, I still feel I don't nearly the level of language as I had of Chinese, and certainly less than that of Japanese. Japan would have been massively more difficult to live in had I not understood the language as well as I did. But it is just one of the many challenges of living here. As it is, I've basically been on my own since I arrived here and have only received minimal support. But I hope that my impression can improve with time. And that is my initial impression of life in Korea. Feel free to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to chatting again next time.